All right, we're live. Another edition of Tap and Birdie Tuesday night at 8. Northern Trust Week have a very special guest, not just a Twitter fan. My real friend Andy Lack is on the pod this week, coming live from Colorado. As some of you may know, Andy and I will be in attendance Saturday at this event that we are handicapping this week. So I'm very looking forward to spending Saturday with Andy and seeing our bets pan out in person. How you doing tonight, Andy?
Brian, I'm fantastic. It's great to join you, man. I'm a big Colorado fan. I love it here. I already did my cowboy hat thing on my podcast, but I'm great. I'm flying back tomorrow, and I'm super excited to see you at the Northern Trust and everyone else who's maybe listening and will be there as well.
I'm really looking forward to seeing some of our Twitter friends there. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so Andy, you're in Aspen. The ball flies a little farther than what are you hitting your pitching wedge in Colorado?
It's a real thing. So it's 15% from what I've heard from kind of the locals that I played with. The issue is I didn't play very well at all because it's so difficult to trust it where you're standing over like 175-yard shot and it's like the right club is pitching wedge, but you're like, really? Like you're really telling me I can hit this pitching wedge this far? And then you pull 9-iron and you fly the green. So it's really hard to trust. I only got to play the first 2 days. And then I kind of had to do a bunch of work stuff, but the ball, it really fly. Like it's a real thing. It's not like a made up thing.
Yeah, no, good problem to have. I'm glad you got some rounds in Colorado while you're there and you're hitting the ball a mile, which you already do. So I'm glad that
Thanks, buddy.
Played some good golf out in Colorado. So let's get into the board. Don't need to reflect on last week. Nothing even bad happened. It was totally fine. I really don't even care about it really much. But normally, like for a regular week, maybe we wouldn't talk about every single top guy. But I felt like this week it's very important to talk about every single guy, like 25-1 and under, just because I feel like everyone is betting at least 2 of these guys. So I definitely want to give our take on everyone at the top of the board. But before we start, got to shout out our best boys. Jeff, honestly, one of the best handicappers on this app, just hitting outrights every week. Jers, our boy. Coach, obviously, he's a couple beers deep. We're so happy to have him. He's our good friend. Jazz, Kirsch, glad you're here. I'm drinking Sam Adams summer weed. It's fine. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Anyone who's tuned in live, watching tomorrow at 1.5 speed on YouTube. I appreciate you checking out the pod, and I'm excited to get into the board. So,
can I ask a quick question? What's your status with Apple and Spotify yet? Are you making that move yet?
No, I think that's going to be like a next season thing.
Okay.
Definitely, live and YouTube. So I at least want to give people the option to listen to it on 1.5 speed because I think it's important. It's easier to get the information in, and it doesn't take up as much as your day. So as long as some people have the option, I'm glad. But I really appreciate the live viewers. I feel like they add a great component to the show. So at the top of the board, we have Jon Rahm. I don't think many betting podcasts are going to say, bet the lowest price guy and a guy under 10-1. He's obviously the best golfer in the world. Obviously, I'm not going to play him. I don't think you are. I don't think many people are. I think the whole community is basically just like, if he wins, he wins. We're hoping it doesn't happen, but we're not getting an 8-1 on the card, especially with these great numbers for some of the super elites in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't besmirch anyone for betting Jon Rahm at 11-1. Actually, the way that I would besmirch people for maybe betting favorites in other weaker field events. I think it does make a lot of sense this week. For the record, Rahm was the number 1 player in my model. He rated out incredibly well. He's finished 3rd at Liberty National before. In my opinion, this is a perfect course for him. But like you, when you're talking about a guy that's in the 8-1, 9-1, 10-1 range, then you're starting to assume that he has like double the win equity as some of the guys that are in the 20s. And I don't personally believe that.
Yeah, no, I think that it makes total sense. And I wouldn't think it's a bad bet if anyone wants to bet it. But I think that with the numbers that we're getting on these people this week, that it just makes sense to move down the board a little bit. So I want to ask you a question, Andy, before we start. Do you think the winner comes from 30-1 and below? Because I really do. Should we be treating this week like a major where we really think a super elite, someone that has lower odds, is going to win this event? Or do you think we could see a guy 50, 60, 70-1 win this week? Like, where do you rank this on a regular tournament? Because I really feel like the winner will be below 30-1 this week.
I agree. It didn't stop me from throwing a few bucks on a couple guys over 100-1 or two guys over 100-1. But yeah, I do agree with that. I was actually looking at Steve Bamford, my new buddy, Steve Bamford's preview, where he has the winning prices of all of the guys who've won from the last 10 years. And it's a lot of top guys. I actually think Bryson, when he won here, was like 100-1. Really? And Patrick Reed, you got a pretty big number on Patrick Reed at Liberty National. He was like 50-1. So would I be shocked if, like, I don't know, Shane Lowry won this tournament? No, I don't think so. I wouldn't be shocked if like Shane Lowry or Abraham Answer, maybe Sergio, won this tournament. But for the most part, yeah, I do. This is the strongest field in golf, I believe, since the Players. So the way that I structured my card, and I know you did the same thing, and a lot of other people did similar things, is I just made 3 really big bets in the 20s.
Yeah, I did the same. And I honestly think people should. I don't know if this is a week to, waste units further down the board. If you really have an inkling about somebody, maybe, but I feel like this would be the week to maybe save those 50, 60-1 winners. Don't maybe bet them top 10, top 20, but I don't really see them winning this week. So a guy that's obviously very popular, he's going to be one of the most owned guys, one of the most bet guys outright, is Jordan Spieth this week. Everyone is saying that this course sets up super well for him. He's had an unbelievable year. He played well at the Open. I mean, this guy is just excellent, and people think he's going to get his breakout win this year at this tournament. Neither of us have bet it. Why didn't you get there on Spieth? And why can you make the case for Spieth this week in terms of an outright bet?
I certainly understand the Spieth love. You can't bet them all, and you have to kind of find these little things that are, the margins are so slim with all of these elite players. Even if you dig into the numbers, like the margins are so slim with these guys from a round to round basis. And with Spieth, his ball striking did regress pretty significantly at Memphis. Now, how much stock you want to put into that, I don't think it's the end of the world by any means. It is, for the record, the first time that he lost strokes off the tee since March. With that being said, there was a lot of water on that course. Kind of John, our buddy, used the same kind of line of thinking with Kevin Kisner, where some of the stats, and I kind of feel that way a little bit with Brooks as well, where some of the stats from Memphis may not be the greatest barometer. Spieth was really out of that tournament since round 1, and he kind of did a decent job to fight his way back. But if you're picking nits and you're trying to differentiate, it was his worst ball striking week in quite some time. And I would probably say that I trust Brooks off a bad ball striking week a little bit more than I trust Spieth off a bad ball striking week. So that would be the only case against him that I was able to find, but I don't besmirch anyone for betting him whatsoever.
Yeah. No, I don't know if the winner of this I could be completely wrong, obviously, but I don't know if this winner of this tournament is going to have to gain over like 7 strokes putting. Like, they might just be able to do it ball striking. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like that's why it might be a little better to back some guys that might struggle with the putter. I feel like when Jordan wins, he's gaining a lot with the putter, and historically that might not be so true here. So that's why I didn't get there. I would take someone more down the board that might get away with a lack of putting and pure ball striking. So that's why I didn't get there.
Oh, I'll give you one more, Brian. I have a good one that I didn't, just looking at my notes. Now, of the elite players, he's also the worst long iron player by like a pretty decent margin.
Okay.
And
I like
30.
That.
So I think that's even a better one than the first reason that I gave you. And 35% of approach shots come from over 200 yards plus. He's not terrible by any means, but of the elite players, he's certainly the worst at that proximity distance.
Yeah. No, and I understand that, and that's why it might not have worked out the past 2 weeks, but I'm going with my gut and what I feel is right, and I would have rather taken DJ, the next guy, than Spieth. So I bet that. I think that DJ, he's obviously had a disappointing year after his blowout win at the Masters and his absolute domination through last fall. Obviously, he plays well around this time of year and at this events. I just feel like things are turning a corner for him. And, he played well at the Open where he wasn't having a fantastic season. And then he went to a course that he's played well at before and an event that he's done well at. He played well. He played well in Memphis. He's kind of trending a little bit. So I'm going to take him. I got an 18 on him. I think that's a good number. And I really think that I'm just hoping that his breakthrough win and his little bit of a disappointing season all comes into fruition this week and we get to see it in person live. So what do you like about DJ this week?
I love DJ this week, man. And he was kind of the guy that I had circled from the beginning when I first started doing my research for this tournament like a week ago. I was just really encouraged by what I saw from him in Memphis from a ball striking perspective. It was his best approach week since March. His off the tee was getting better. He's starting to putt a little bit better. The short game has been actually okay with him as well. And I just think with DJ, this is and I don't know how much merit you want to put into this, but this is the time of year that he really tends to kick things into swing. And I understand that this tournament, he's won the Northern Trust 3 times. I understand that this tournament has been played at different courses, but I do think there is something to be said that when DJ and Paulina get themselves into the tri-state area, they rent their house in the Hamptons, it kind of just this time of year, things kind of pick up for him. And he's been trending positively for quite some time now. If you look at it, you're right about the Open. He played better there as well. He dominated Liberty National in 2017 at the President's Cup. He was the only player in that entire tournament to get 4 points. I mean, I watched the highlights. He was just smoking guys. Yeah. I think it's a perfect course for him. So I'm with you. I'm in on DJ at 18-1.
Let's do it. And honestly, and we talk about long iron game. He's obviously excellent at that. He hits the ball a mile. He's going to be having shorter irons into these greens than other people. I just think that what he did last fall was so impressive that we must see some glimmer of that this week. And maybe he doesn't win, but I think he will be in contention on Sunday. And that's all we are looking for. So next guy, Collin Morikawa, arguably, probably the second best golfer in the world right now. 2 major wins in his debut, best iron player in the world. He's coming to a second shot golf course. Can he win 2 majors on his debut and then win the first playoff event and just have just this unbelievable scene? Because every single tournament, it feels like everyone's just scared of him. They don't put him on their card, and then they're scared of him just winning and ball striking the shit out of everything and maybe hitting a few putts, and then he just runs away and wins this thing. I really don't want that to happen. He's not on my card, but obviously it could very well happen.
Yeah, I think he probably has the highest percentage chance to make everybody that doesn't bet him feel really stupid at the end of the week. There was a sentiment that we would never see Morikawa above 15-1 at the Open. And here we go already. He's at 18. Similar to Spieth. I'm not playing Morikawa either. I don't know how much stock you want to put into the fact that he's lost strokes on approach in 2 weeks in a row, but the rate that he was on was Tiger Woods-esque. We haven't seen iron play from someone like that since Tiger Woods. And there's kind of 2 schools of thought with that. Number one school of thought is Collin Morikawa is Tiger Woods-esque, and he's the next best player that we've seen since Tiger Woods. I understand that school of thought. School of thought number 2 is, though, there's probably going to be a little bit of regression. And that is what we have started to see the last 2 weeks. And that regression for me personally, coupled by the fact that I have a very difficult time trusting his putting, despite the fact that it's been a lot better this week, is enough for me to lay off him this week.
Yeah, no, we're basically betting against an absolutely historic run. And I'm glad that his approach numbers have dialed down a little bit, because I think that when Collin had these wins, he was trending and playing a little better, and then it all came together, not really the other way around. So I'm totally fine passing on him and having no exposure to him. I honestly never really play him, and it's obviously not been profitable, and it would have been a lot better if we did. But you know what? That's fine. That's in the past. He's not going to win this week. I'm looking forward to him seeing him hit some iron shots this week. So next golfer on the board, obviously, is your favorite golfer in the world. I'm so glad you're going to be able to see him and his team. I don't know the names, but I'm glad you'll be able to be reunited and see them in person this week. I'm sure they know you by face already. So I don't know. I know that you just love seeing him in person. You don't need any money tied to him if he's playing well. But should anybody have any exposure to him, maybe in a DFS sense because he's low owned, but what are you thinking about your best boy, Xander Schauffele, this week? Gold medal winner, Xander Schauffele, by the way.
I'm so excited to see Xander and Maya and Ross and Derek hopefully will be on site as well. And obviously Stefan and Ping Yi and Austin and Nico and the whole gang will be back together. My issue with Xander is this. I follow pretty much everyone in the Xander orbit pretty closely on social media. And I think it's possible that obviously the Memphis was the obvious Olympic gold medal hangover spot. I think it's in play that we might see a 2-week hangover. I don't want to suggest that he's not hungry by any means. And I think if his ownership is sub 10%, I just checked before we got back on, it was creeping up to 12. 12 isn't really enough for me to go there. If it was closer to 7 or 8, you bet I'd be there. But he's another player like Spieth and Morikawa, where you just named the 3 elite players that lost strokes on approach in Memphis. And for me personally, I would rather, and Brooks too, for me personally, I would rather play the guys that are trending in the upwards direction with their irons and their ball striking, as opposed to a couple guys that are kind of regressing a little bit. We saw that with Xander a little bit at Memphis. And for me, I think there are better options than Xander this week. I am so excited to follow him. I hope I'm wrong. I feel so much better about these weeks that I don't think he's going to play well. It's just, there's so much less pressure on me. I get less mentions. I get less tweets. I get to follow him just as a pure fan, which I'm very excited to do, but I will not be playing Xander this week.
So Saturday, we're going, is your plan for the day, no matter what, you're following Xander through 18 holes?
Well, I'm going to follow Xander his entire round on Thursday morning with Nagels. Okay. So I feel like I will get my Xander fix on Thursday. I know we're rolling together on Thursday. And what's beautiful about it is that we both are going to have DJ, and I won't give away the other golfer that we have. So no, I mean, it's kind of a game time decision for me, Brian. I want to see, I want to see how things play out.
Yeah. Got to see who he's paired with too. So the next guy, I just went on Share Sports, and he is projected as the highest owned golfer this week, which makes me feel great about betting him and having a lot of exposure to him. Rory McIlroy, most owned golfer this week. Super bet. I bet him. I placed a large outright on him. I know you did too. Excellent ball striking numbers in Memphis. Struggled with the putter and still finished well. Again, we're talking about maybe you can ball strike your way around this court. You don't need to be the best putter. So I like that. We're talking about gaining strokes on approach, not going the other way. We're talking about maybe finding some new passion after the Olympics and representing his great country. And things kind of keep moving together, and everyone seems to love Rory this week. And I'd love for you to plead your case for the Northern Ireland Rory McIlroy this week. So hopefully we'll be able to see in person, and he will be a few under par.
Well, the first thing I want to mention is I am typically somebody that would be scared off by the high ownership, but I've really had to check myself on that stuff. I mean, we're now dating back to, I want to say, the U.S. Open with Louis. where you have Louis at 20% at the US Open. He almost wins. You have Jordan Spieth at over 20% at the British Open. He almost wins. You have Harris English at 25% at Memphis. He almost wins. You have Russell Henley at damn near 30%. He almost wins. You have Webb Simpson at close to 30%, or probably, I think it was like 35%. He finishes second. The public probably just is getting sharper these days based on all of the great free content that is out there. I staked my claim on Rory early. A lot of people that I talk golf with that have way bigger platforms than I also are in on that too. And so I knew that it was going to be a Rory week. And, I've done the thing before, Brian, where I've had the Wednesday night before the British Open where I'm like, Jordan Spieth's a fucking square play, despite your hours and hours of research of how he checks every box. Same with Russell Henley. Like, these guys are high owned for a reason. I think Rory's a smart play. I can give you like 16 different angles of why I think so, whether it's narrative based, stat based. There's some Vegas stuff going on that I like with Rory as well. But yeah, he's my guy this week. I don't have the conviction that John did with Kisner, but I would probably say that this is the most confident I've felt in an outright in quite some time.
So how much does he have to gain putting? Like, I want to know how good you think he has to be with the putter this week, because I think we are pretty certain that his driver and irons will be dialed. Like, are you worried about his putting at all? Like, because like that would be really my only concern, and I'd like your take on it.
A stroke, maybe. I mean, Justin Rose finished second here, losing 1.2 strokes putting. Abe Answer, I think, was a neutral putter and finished second here before. Adam Scott gained 0.9 strokes putting in 2013 and won this tournament. So, yeah, I think if the point you're getting at is we have reached a course where you can definitely get away with elite ball striking and kind of so-so putting, then I'm with you 100%. I think that is one of the many good reasons to be on Rory this week.
So let's do it. Let's finally be a part of these community wins that everyone's been having on Twitter.
Never been a part of one in my life.
We don't seem to be in on because
I never end up betting those guys.
Yeah, no, it's tough. So maybe we're a part of it this week. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much laid our case. The last thing I want to say, Brian, is I think that he is, this is not. I understand that you're saying that he is the highest clicked guy, but from what I've seen, I don't think that the difference in ownership or the difference in people betting Rory and Spieth is much. Yeah. I think Rory's a little bit more than Spieth, but the Spieth contingent to me feels, from just what I've heard and observed on Twitter, the Spieth contingent feels to me just almost as big as the Rory one. Yeah. No, and honestly, I'm less on DFS this week, and even more recently, like I'm just trying to like win some bets. I'm really not trying to deposit a bunch of money in DraftKings. I'd rather trust my betting. So a guy that's 20% owned, it doesn't matter if everyone bets him. If he still wins, you still win the same amount. So I'm not really worried about the ownership, but I'm glad other people have the same thoughts we are. And if you want your card to be Spieth or Rory, you're not missing out on anything. So I didn't do that, but you definitely could. So next guy is Brooks Koepka. I placed an outright on him. I maybe feel a little bit worse about it after placing it, but
why? Elaborate on that.
Like, no, I'm really shocked that like his ownership is low and he's like a dog in all these matchups against all these people. Like, I'm like genuinely shocked. And like we talk about like public perception of these golfers and stuff. Like, I expect it to happen to other people, but not Brooks. So like it's very shocking to me that he cannot finish well when he was obviously popular for good reason at St. Jude. Like, he didn't play well. Who cares? Like, we do this every week. Like, you can't worry that much about last week. But when we talk about these harder conditions and these lower scoring events and these playoff events where there's a lot of money at stake, I mean, you can't go wrong with Brooks Koepka. I literally don't care about St. Jude, and these matchups that he's dogs in, I'm just betting. And if I lose, then I'm okay with it. But I don't know if anyone else can get this matchup, but I just love him even money over Victor Hovland. And I know people like Victor Hovland, but I just feel like they're different golfers. And I just feel like if I'm getting plus money on Brooks Koepka, then that's fine. My worry about Brooks is like, I don't know if he's like due for a win. Like, he's always in contention, but he just hasn't been able to break through and be that guy on Sunday. And it's a little worrisome to me. And even when his only win of the year at Waste Management, he made a crazy eagle and just kind of fell into it. So when he's been in contention on Sunday,
that's Xander's
I didn't mean to bring it up. I'm sorry. But these events that he's been in contention on Sunday or in the final group or in the second last group, he hasn't been the Brooks we saw in 2018, 2019. So that worries me a little bit.
So 2 key important points that you brought up with Brooks. The reason why Brooks is always going to be a little bit more undervalued in the matchup market just because he has a little bit more volatility than like a Xander. Like, you're never going to see Brooks as a favorite over Xander in a matchup. Probably not over Spieth in a matchup either, just because what tends to happen with Brooks is if he has a bad round one, he's a little bit more likely than some of the other top tier players to check out just a little bit, which is kind of what happened at Memphis, which is why I am with you. I didn't get there in an outright, but I'm using him heavily in DFS. I really like Brooks this week a lot. I do think the ownership's a little bit crazy. You can't put a ton of stock into that with Brooks. Like, if you look at his Memphis numbers, he lost like 5 strokes around the green. Is Brooks spending the amount of time over a greenside chip when he's tied for 55th? Like, it's kind of obvious that like we can't put a ton into those Memphis stats. And if you look at how he's performed coming off poor ball striking weeks, he's really good. Like, he lost strokes on approach earlier this year, came back at the PGA Championship, gained 7.8. We see this all the time where he'll suck at the Palmetto. And it's just clear that he just doesn't care that much. And then he comes back the next week and contends. So I think that the perception on Brooks based on what happened recently at Memphis is incorrect. I think it doesn't take a long time to just go through and look at how he's performed based off of a bad week. He's not a player where there's a trend needs to be there. Yeah. Right. A trend doesn't need to be there for Brooks to play well. So I like Brooks a lot. He's one of my favorite DFS.
I think he's a great DFS play. I think he's a great top 10, top 20 play. I might get there if I have the some good numbers on him. What's the book I got you on has excellent numbers. I'm glad you're appreciating that. But I think that's really an interesting point about Brooks, because we see some of these elite guys backdoor their way into like a T11, like Spieth at Memphis. He finished T11, had a couple horrible days, and he grinded over the weekend. Roy
Brooks isn't going to do that.
He doesn't do that. So maybe his finish could have been a lot better. So I'm just a little bit surprised that the betting public, doesn't realize that and is just off him this week. So I think that does make me more confident, and I feel good about my Brooks play. And I think I might kind of hedge it a little bit with like a top 10 or a top 20 and place a little bit more on it. So next guy is Bryson DeChambeau. I think his performance in Memphis definitely deserves some credit. Coming off COVID, he was at 35-1 on DraftKings, talked about how his game wasn't even there and he wasn't even had high expectations, and he still finished in the top 10 and was in the final group on Sunday. I think that, you're looking at him at 25-1. It's like, it's kind of hard to pass up, and I'm glad some people are betting him, and I know I'm not, and I know you're not, but it just, I don't think he should be ever overlooked in a tournament. And we talk about long irons. He's hitting a 7-iron when everyone else is hitting a 5 or a 6. So he has a good long iron game, and he's never out of it. So I know you didn't get there, but it makes sense to maybe have some exposure to Bryson this week.
I like Bryson a lot this week. Again, I'm playing a lot of Brooks and Bryson often together in DFS this week, because I just think that the ownership based on public perception of these two guys is a little bit wrong. And you brought up a key point also that I'll just touch on quickly with Bryson. Part of the reason that I like him, I think this is a perfect course for Bryson. I mean, we must be looking at different things if you don't think this is a perfect Bryson course, because what I look at with this course is there are a lot of longer holes with pretty wide fairways where you can bomb away, but then there are a lot of shorter holes where you do have to lay back off the tee and you aren't really able to hit driver. Both of those scenarios play perfectly into Bryson's hands, because on the holes where everybody has to lay up, you hit the nail on the head. Bryson's going to be hitting a 7-iron, and where a lot of other guys are going to be hitting a 4-iron. And 35% of these approach shots come from 200 yards plus, and Bryson's the number 2 player on tour for 200 yards plus. So if I was drawing up a course for Bryson, this would probably be it. My question to you is, like, do you put, this is such an unquantifiable narrative, but I think it's fun to talk about anyway. Like, do you really put stock into the Brooksy thing? Because I will say, we both know as New Yorkers, I've been going to New York. I've had season tickets to the Knicks my whole life. I've been going to Giants games my whole life. The fans in New York aren't like the fans in Memphis.
No.
So if he thought it was bad in Memphis, it's going to be pretty fascinating to see what fireballs get thrown out of
people. Drunk, 21 to 28-year-olds in the Northeast are fucking assholes, and they don't have normal golf etiquette, and they don't give a single fuck about what is right at a golf event. They're going to be up this guy's ass, especially if Brooks is playing well, and especially if Bryson's in a lit. People just want to follow him just so they can heckle him, and I think that in the Northeast, it is actually very prominent. Like, I think it's like, I was at Bethpage Black. Like, the fans are just drunk. They don't give a shit. Like, they're just like people from the, like, I'm not like that. I don't act like that at golf events, but I see it all the time. So, but I don't think that when Bryson doesn't play well, it's because of the fans in the crowd. Like, I don't think that's what's going to hurt his game the most. Like, I think that he can take it. But I do think that is a very important issue to talk about. But I'm looking at Fantasy National, and I really can't even believe my eyes that he's 5% owned. I might have to deposit some money into DraftKings and roster him, because that is just, I mean, it's just too good to pass up. I mean, he's just as much owned as Keith fucking Mitchell. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't think that, I just think that it's a good play. And you talked about if there's wide fairways, long holes, that's perfect for Bryson. So I think it makes sense. And I think it might be a tad underlooked this week. So
I agree. 100%. I'm with you. I think the ownership is silly. I will be there with Bryson 100% in DraftKings.
So this next guy, I think you have a pretty good barometer on. JT, ball striking bastard, can't putt. Some people have betting him. I don't know. I honestly don't know if you got there or not, but I trust your read on JT at these big events, and I feel like you can kind of tell when he might pop or when to play him or not. So do you think this course can set up well for him? Do you think that he could get away with not putting as well? And do you think that he could just ball strike his way around this course?
So I do. And JT's my third guy. I got him at 27-1. This wasn't a week that I was completely planning to play JT. I kind of wanted to see where the numbers were shaking out, but to harken back to your original point, I've been kind of critical of JT lately. There were a lot of people that wanted to play him at the US Open, at the British Open, at the Scottish Open, at the Olympics. And I was just like, I don't know if you guys are watching the golf. He doesn't have it right now. He's not vintage JT, and the stats obviously back that up. He actually grinded his ass off to finish top 20 at the US Open, gaining like 5 strokes putting. His irons were like terrible. And you kind of started to see a little bit of a switch at the Olympics. The irons got better at the Olympics, and then boom, suddenly he goes to Memphis and he gains six strokes on approach. And it's like, okay, the old JT is back. Of course, part of the old JT is that he loses 5 strokes putting. But listen, that's part of the game with Justin Thomas. Like, when that's baked into the number with him, that's the reason why he's 27-1. You're betting on the ceiling. You're betting on a guy who's 28 years old and has won 14 times on tour in his career already. He has a higher win rate still than any other of these guys. So that's the thing with Justin Thomas. It's like, I'm betting on the ceiling at 27-1. I know that that's the only thing I have on him. I do like him in DFS a little bit because I think he's underowned in DFS as well. But for me with Justin Thomas, I finally saw what I was looking for in Memphis, which was the irons return to form.
So he can
that's
get
enough
it
for
done
me.
this week. No, that's fine. And I think that when we talk about these numbers, it's like everyone's kind of a little not even appreciating the numbers they're getting on people this week. I mean, if this was a regular tournament and JT and Bryson and Brooks were like over 22-1, people would be really excited. And I just hope that people appreciate how good of numbers they're getting on some of these golfers this week that obviously have amazing win equity and obviously can win any tournament that they show up to because they're some of the best golfers in the world. So I'm cutting it there. That is the super elite. We talked about every single super elite. The next guy is Abe Ancer. I think you should bet him top 20. I like him. I think that I use this kind of thought process a lot, is that if he can contend at this course in worse form when he's not as an elite golfer as he once was, then when he is now an elite golfer and just won a WGC and has posted a lot of top 10s, that you should just play him at this course. I'm not exactly sure how the numbers and the strokes gained and things like that, how well this actually sets up for him, but I'm under the impression that if you can contend in worse form, you can do it now. So I'm playing Abe Ancer top 20. That's it. I just think he'll be in it. So of the next group, Ancer, Casey, Berger, Scheffler, Hovland, and Cantlay. Who is your favorite play outright? Like, who do you like in this range? Who are you feeling this week?
Probably Scheffler. I couldn't get there with the outright just because I made those 3 big bets in the 20s, but I'm going to play Scotty Scheffler in DFS. I looked at the latest ownership projections on Fanshare. I thought he was going to be closer to 15%. He's looking like he's trending more towards like 9 or 10. I think that's great on Scotty Scheffler. I love the kid. I'm completely enamored with him. I'm completely enamored with his game. I think he's a big game hunter. I think something about him in these bigger tournaments clicks. He hasn't finished worse than 20th in a WGC FedEx Cup playoff event or major in the last calendar year. He's the only player in the world to do that. I think he knows that he needs to do a little bit more than a top 20 finish to get himself on the Ryder Cup. And I think he will be right there in the mix. I love Scotty Scheffler this week. He'll be the guy that because I'm not going to be able to get there outright. I just don't have the room. But he will be the guy that I probably feel the worst about if he does win.
Yeah, no, and I feel like with Scotty, and maybe we fell into that. It's like I don't love it outright because you're basically betting on like a breakthrough thing to happen, and I know he
shouldn't have lower odds than Cantlay or Berger.
Yeah, like,
he shouldn't.
But that's the thing, like, and that's what I love about betting is that I really think that if you're getting plus money on him, top 10 and top 20, every week we're looking for a consistent thing. And like you said, he just shows up in these harder events, these big events with better fields. So if he's consistently shown that he can do that, then there's no point in laying off it and getting off that train. So place the top 10 and place the top 20 on him, because I really do think it is an excellent bet this week and something that I will be wagering on and something that I have been because it's just worked for me, and I don't want to stop a good thing if it's broken. He hasn't had great Sundays, but that's okay. I do think that a little bit of Ryder Cup motivation and just the fact that he tends to play well in harder events with better fields is all the reason in the world to get after him this week. So a guy that's very popular, and he's always popular in majors, is Berger. I think he's very popular this week, just from my take on seeing people's picks. They think that it's Berger week. My hesitation with Berger is that he's obviously hasn't won a major. He obviously plays well in big events, but an outright on him, I don't see him. If he's been a great golfer for a long time, and I feel like if he hasn't won a huge event, then I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know. I see him winning a random event with a weaker field because he's an amazing golfer, but I don't know these big events. I'm sure he could top 10, but I don't like him outright.
Sure. I understand completely why he's popular. He's not somebody that I'm looking to actively fade. In fact, I may end up going there in some cash games because I do think that he provides a lot of consistency. And you kind of saw the same thing in Memphis. Is it's like Daniel Berger was 20%, and at the end of the week, Daniel Berger finished 5th. Now, Memphis is probably a little bit of a better course for him than here, just based on the experience, but he did play well in the 2017 President's Cup. There's nothing about Liberty National that doesn't scream Daniel Berger to me. He's actually 3rd on tour in approach over his last 36 rounds. Berger is probably, he doesn't get mentioned with the JTs and the Morikawas and even the Paul Caseys of the world. Like, Berger's a top 5 iron player in the world over a pretty large sample size. He's really been that good, and he doesn't really get the credit he deserves in that right. I like my guys, Brian, and I know you do too. And it's like, you have to take a stand on some of these guys. We joke all the time when we're on the golf course. It's like, I hate the guys that go on all these different podcasts and they pick a different guy on every single one. It's like, you got to take a stand at some point. People listen to this podcast because they want to know plays. Yeah. And Berger is not somebody that I would recommend in kind of a high stakes GPP. Is not somebody that I would recommend in the outright market, but I think he's a pretty good play in cash, and that would be the only way that I would deploy him.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm glad I did bet a top 20 on him because I really do think he will.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I don't think outright. So a guy that, look, it's my podcast. I just want to talk about it for a second. I think that anybody that places an outright on Viktor Hovland is wasting their money just a little bit. I really just do not see him winning one of these playoff events, one of these big events, and. I mean, I'm sure he will play well. I am 100% certain he can finish T12 this week and have a great week. But I just don't like him as an outright play. I might have a little bit of bias to it. But I see a lot of people. He's on a lot of people outrights card. I think your money is better spent other places. But we've obviously talked a lot about the top guys on the board. I want to talk about more guys that might be a little more down the board that might have some better odds, top 20, top 40, and just some guys that, we spent a lot of time on the super elites this week, which I think was warranted and definitely needed. But I want to know some of the guys that might be a little farther down the board that you like in DFS, that you like top 20, top 40, that you just think are good plays, but they might not be the best players in the world.
Okay. Well, first of all, I disagree with you about Hovland. I would like to just defend the Hovland. I'm not going to do the whole Hovland thing here, but I let the record show, like, I am not on there we go, Jeff.
Because
I'm not on that side of the argument. I think
that's when you say something on a podcast, you're like, I understand you don't want to be claimed in with me. So I appreciate you staking your claim. I really do. I really do appreciate it.
Okay. So, I like Hovland. There's guys I like just as much as Hovland though. I mean, are we talking about, I think we're probably shifting a little bit more to DFSs because we basically already touched our outright cards. I like Webb Simpson this week, and I don't know what his recent ownership is. There are a couple other guys that I like a little bit lower than Webb Simpson in like the low 8s and the high 7s that I think are like really great pivot plays. Like, I like Finau and I like Sungjae a lot.
I like Finau too.
Yeah, but I like Webb, man. And I just think, like, I get it. People are going to discredit how he played at the Wyndham because it's the Wyndham. But if you look at how Webb does at the Wyndham, he never gains 8 strokes on approach there. He usually gains 8 strokes putting there. And Webb gained 8 strokes on approach last week at the Wyndham. It's the best iron week of his career. I mean, it's not nothing. right? So, you're getting a Webb that isn't coming off a week where he finished second at the Wyndham, gaining 8 strokes putting. You're getting Webb coming off a week where he struck the ball better than he has all season. So I like Webb here. I think Webb, and I can talk about this a little bit more with some of these other guys that I like Sungjae too, where I think these guys get thrown into these classes where they're like these short Bermuda specialists and like you only play Webb on Webb courses. And it's like, I think you're selling the guy short. I think Webb's a better player than that. He's won a US Open before. He's finished 13th and 12th and 15th at Liberty National. Like why do you believe that Webb can't play well here, or at the very least be like pay off his price in DraftKings? So I like Webb a lot this week.
No, I like Webb too. And I think that something like you didn't bring up is that he top 20 at the Open and he top 20 at St. Jude. It's not like he was playing horrible and then he goes to his favorite course in the whole world and then plays well. Like, okay, obviously that was going to happen, but he's trending and he's playing well and he's showing that he can contend and play well at other events that don't suit him perfectly. So at 13% owned, okay, that's not, but I do think he can contend this week because he's been showing that he can perform and hit amazing iron shots and put together some really good finishes at tournaments that aren't perfectly suited towards him. So if it was just the Wyndham, okay, but he's shown in his last 3 starts that he's just played well. It doesn't matter the course. So I think you kind of sold me on Webb there a little bit, and I like a little top 20 action.
I'm there
on Webb. So Adam Scott,
sure,
definitely checks boxes and definitely makes sense. He has great history at this very tournament, and he was in a playoff last week. So when you put the course history and the recent form together, it just seems like something you could play. Do you understand why people are playing him? I don't know if you are, but what do you think about Adam?
I totally understand why people are playing Adam Scott. I'm not playing Adam Scott personally, but I get it. I mean, he had an unbelievable ball striking week at the Wyndham. The story of Adam Scott's season has basically been that he's kind of been so much worse than we're used to from a ball striking standpoint. And kind of the only way he's been able to scrape by is because he's been putting way better than he usually does. That completely reversed at the Wyndham. It was like back to old Adam Scott where he was hitting the ball great. I believe he gained 6.8 strokes on approach and he was kind of like a neutral putter. That's vintage Adam Scott. The issue with him, the reason why I'm not playing is I think you need to be very careful when a guy shows you their true colors for 6 months and then they have one performance. For me, I just like to see a little bit more. You see this, and Adam Scott is way better than these guys, but you see this with like guys like Sepp Straka all the time where it's like, whoa, like Sepp Straka gained 8 strokes on approach last week. Like Bo Hoag gained 8 strokes on approach last week. Like where did that come from? Well, it's an anomaly. That's where it came from. It's not.
These guys are professional golfers.
Yeah,
they can do it. Like they're capable of it. So no, I like that case. I like that case a little bit of against Adam Scott is because all year he hasn't been unbelievable. And then he has one absolutely excellent tournament. So that's not a reason to go to him. So you brought up Tony. He's 8% owned. I feel like obviously we talk about Ryder Cup motivations and actually needing a spot on the team that's not guaranteed. And we talk about, a little bit harder conditions and lower scoring. Tony's amazing in majors and has some decent recent form and played well at the Open. So I like Tony this week. I know you just said you do too, but I'm a little kind of confused why he's a little bit overlooked and under-owned because I feel like this could be a course that he can contend on and play well on. And if he's not obvious and people aren't thinking that, then I think that's even more of a reason to bet him.
So, yes, although I will say this, I do understand why he's low owned, and I actually was hoping for something a little bit uglier. I think that the 8%, that's kind of trending upwards. I thought it was like 4% or a little bit earlier in the week. But here's the thing with Tony. You kind of touched on this point, so I'll just piggyback on it. But the reason why his stats are so bad is because he's been really bad in like the 3M Open and the Travelers and the Valero Texas Open. For some reason, when Finau shows up to those courses, when he's like the 20-1 guy or the 25-1 guy, and it's an easier course and you have to make birdies, he's been terrible. But when you get him on a more difficult course or a major, he finished 8th at the PGA, 10th at the Masters, and 15th at the Open. So like Tony Finau's fine. I just think that the stats get a little bit juked by the fact that maybe he has a little bit more pressure on himself going into these weaker field events because he sucked in them recently. But this is a big field event, and I think that like this is a great course for Tony Finau, and I think that still at 8%, I think that's a really good. I think it's like a good spot for Finau this week.
No, and I like it too because we talk about these guys that might do better on more difficult conditions and in better fields, like Scotty Scheffler, like these other guys that you kind of just play them at your certain tournaments. And obviously, yeah, he's going to rank out well at the 3M or some like easy TPC birdie fest, but he doesn't perform because that's not his strong suit. So, and obviously, I'm not saying anybody should bet him 55-1 outright, but I think that'll finish well. And I think that in DraftKings, and if you want to T13 out of somebody or you want to cash the top 20, I think Tony is a good play this week. I think somebody that I want to talk about and that's super popular and that a lot of people like to play and are specifically playing a lot this week is Kokrak. They're throwing a big number at him, 2-time winner on tour, 65-1. Can obviously get a lot of good numbers on him. Top 10, top 20. He's going to be high owned. Do you think that's a move or a play this week?
I'm good on Kokrak. I'm good on it. I can elaborate, but I'm
not playing him. That's fine with me. So who do you like further down the board for like a top 40 this week? Who are you guys that think can rank out and play some good golf at Liberty National this week?
I think I said this on my podcast. I think Sungjae M is going to be in the winning lineup this week. I love Sungjae so much this week. I think the same thing I mentioned with Webb. People only want to play Sungjae when he's on Bermuda or he's in Florida. And I just think that you're really selling the guy short. We're talking about a player who finished second at the Masters the first time he ever showed up to Augusta on bent grass greens. So you get to these places where it's like, oh, like we're not going to play Sungjae because it's not Bermuda or it's not in Florida. And you get this ownership discount on a guy that hit the ball unbelievably well at Wyndham last week. This was another thing that I talked about on my podcast. It's like, you need to be careful with that Wyndham leaderboard and how bunched up it got. Sungjae finished 24th in that tournament. He was 4 strokes outside of the playoff, and he lost 2.5 strokes putting, right? So if Sungjae even just putts to his baseline, Sungjae's in that playoff too. But you look at the 24th place finish, and you're like, oh, Sungjae was fine, whatever. So I like Sungjae. The other two guys that are really like farther down the board, I like Keegan a lot. I bet Keegan at 140-1. I bet Carlos Ortiz at 200-1, and I'm going right back to Gooch. Those are the guys that I really like kind of in the 100 plus and kind of 7,500 and below range.
Of all those, obviously, I love Keegan Bradley. I just think he's a great golfer. I'm really enamored by him. So if anyone, I could be sold on Keegan Bradley. So why do you like him for maybe a top 20, top 40? I think that, again, if we're talking about ball strikers that might get away with only gaining a half a stroke putting or not being an elite putter in the world, I think that makes sense for Keegan because he's a perfect example of that. So I'd like for you to sell me a little bit on Keegan because I'm already halfway there.
Okay. We should circle back to Kokrak too per coach's request when we're done. Yeah. But, so I think you brought up a really good point, Brian. I think that this is a course where you can, or statistically what we've seen so far is that you can get away with mediocre putting if your ball striking is really good. And it's a little bit harder to back a guy like Keegan Bradley at a tournament like the Rocket Mortgage or even the 3M, or like if he ever plays the John Deere Classic, because Keegan, like, he just doesn't have that in his bag. Like that 8+8 strokes putting week, the way that certain players don't have 8 strokes on approach in their bag. But I look at a player like Keegan, and I'm with you, Brian. I do think that this tournament's going to be won by one of the high-end guys, but I mean, 3 of Keegan's 4 wins were a major, a WGC, and a FedEx Cup playoff event. Like, the guy does so much better on harder courses where an elite tee to green game is kind of, there's more emphasis on that because the irons are so good. So I just look at a guy like Keegan on Liberty National, and I think that the formula is there. And like, this is a guy, Brian, that everyone was hammering at 80-1 to win the PGA Championship. And he was like 15. He was everyone's darling. And it's like, what happened? The ball striking was the same. And he had a couple okay tournaments because he putted like Keegan Bradley. That's who he is, right? So I like Keegan a lot, and I like that the shine's off of him a lot too. I think it's a really great number for him in the top 40 market, and I'm going to be playing him a lot in DFS.
Yeah, so I've been talking about having been good in the top 40s, but I'm fine. What'd you get him at top 40?
Let me check. It was good. I think Sia came on my pod last night and was talking about plus 500 or 5-1 top 20. I think I went with
he's probably about like plus 170 top 40, which is fine.
Okay. I'm
fine with that.
And I got 165.
Again, yeah. And we're talking about the PGA, and it's like, those are harder conditions. Those are where you need to, those are like lower scoring events. Like he finished in the top 20. So I'm fine with Keegan this week. So Coach, our good friend who we like very much, he supports our content, and he's a great guy, and he knows my cousin, and he's a great caddy, and he's a great guy. He wants us to talk about Kokrak. I understand it because he plays really well on Bent, and he's obviously a 2-time winner on tour, and you know, he can contend in these big events. So I like him in a matchup over Henley. That's about it. You know, I worry about him in majors because he hasn't been the best, if I'm not mistaken, or these big events. But let me know what you think about Kokrak.
I think the issue with Kokrak is, and like, I think you're fine on a matchup with him, especially against Henley, who may be still seeing ghosts after that tournament. But I look at a guy like Kokrak, and people glom onto these guys to the point where like they get up to like 20%. And I think Kokrak's hovering around 18 right now. And you really have to start asking yourself, like, okay, what is it about Jason Kokrak that makes him double more likely to outperform Sungjae Im this week? Because it can't be the ball striking, right? Because Kokrak sucked at the Wyndham and Sungjae was great. And maybe there is like, this is so hard to predict, but like, you know, sometimes these guys that they kind of come out of nowhere and kind of change their class. Like, I'll give you a couple examples, like a Max Homa, or a Harris English, or a Jason Kokrak, or even a little bit this year, like a Cameron Tringale, or a Charlie Hoffman, or a Corey Connors. It's like, okay, we have seen that these guys have the ability to get really hot and have a really good season, but what have we seen to believe that this guy is like an actual elite golfer that deserves to be 25-1, like Kokrak was for a couple weeks? And now, you know, I think he's back down to like a price that suits him well. I think that 7,800 is fine. He's shown winning upside. I think that 80-1 in the betting market is a pretty good number for a guy that's shown that he can close the door. But it's really hard for me to get behind a guy that the ball striking now 2 weeks in a row is going in the wrong direction. And I think maybe the books may know just a little bit that he might be on the wrong side of a little run here.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I don't think that Kokrak's a guy that you play in these major type events that are, you know, like don't have super high scores and that, you know, have a lot of elite players in it. So I'm sure he can finish well in T17, but I'm just playing him a matchup against Russell Henley, who we obviously all hate and is a horrible person. So I'm not gonna like come on this podcast and like talk about these guys in the bottom of the board because I have no opinion on them and I'm not betting them and I have no exposure to them. So Andy, I want to ask you what you're most looking forward to seeing some live golf in action this weekend. What are you most looking forward to about being at the Northern Trust this weekend?
I'm very excited, Brian, to meet I've already had a bunch of DMs this week. I'm very excited to meet some of the people there are some people that have been listening to my podcast from like the very beginning before anybody knew who I was. And I very excited to meet some of those guys. Obviously, it's so weird to me that this works. But like, I have not, since I had any presence on Twitter, I have met up with all these different people from all these different walks of life, from Xander Legion to Nagels to you to John to Jers to all these different guys, to Chris Powers and Stephen Hennessy and all the Golf Digest guys, that like, they're real friends of mine now, that like that I talk to all the time and that I would hang out with in like any capacity, whether it's on a golf course or just grabbing a couple drinks. So I love the community that we have. And I'm just excited to meet more people, because like, I'm like batting 1,000. I haven't met like one guy that's like, oh, this guy's cool on Twitter, but he's an asshole in real life. So maybe that changes this week at the Northern Trust, but I'm just super excited to meet some more people.
Yeah, no, I am too. And like, that's what's so great about this community. And me and you are very lucky people to have a following and have people that like and support us. And I really like, obviously I'm a people person. I love meeting people. I love interacting with people. Like, I love getting to know people. So I think that this weekend is a perfect opportunity for that. Because, we interact on Twitter and like we talk golf and it's all these things, but there's something about like really meeting somebody and getting to know them in person and having a few beers and watching golf and, sweating out these bets that we all know and love. So I'm very much looking forward to the Northern Trust this weekend. Yeah, no, Coach knows I love people. I'm a people person. I'm a people pleaser. So, Andy, I hope you have a safe flight back.
Thanks, buddy.
I can't wait to see you Saturday. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing some live golf and on a beautiful course, and hopefully we can hit some bets this week. So the board's yours. Tell us where we can find you and any closing thoughts.
Thank you, Brian, so much for having me on. I'm psyched to see you Saturday morning. I'm not going to reveal your Friday night plans on this podcast, but okay. Okay. All right, cool. We'll move on from that. Thanks for letting me plug. So I did mention this like a couple of times already, but I am changing the name of my podcast and joining the Rotoballer Radio Network. I'm officially doing that this week, probably tomorrow on the flight home. So look out for like that tweet with the new logo and all that stuff. Nothing changes in terms of content. I still own all of my content. I still get to talk about whatever I want. The podcasts still come out on Sunday. They still come out on Tuesday. You don't have to follow a new Twitter account. You don't have to resubscribe to anything. But that is a big change for me, and I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited for what's to come. And I have a podcast that dropped this morning as well with Sia, if you want some more of our thoughts on these guys. And that's probably about it for me, buddy.
No, I really appreciate it. It was a great podcast. Again, if you listened live, if you're listening tomorrow, really appreciate it. It was a great podcast.